The most dangerous sound in the LeVeque Tower wasn't gunfire. It was a baby's cry on the executive floor. Genevieve Carter knew this the moment her daughter's wail shattered the pre-dawn silence.
Hey there, little one.
She
You're
knew
full
it
of
when the
energy
other
today.
cleaners scattered like
Oh, she's just the
roaches.
sweetest thing.
She
She
knew
sure
it when the
is.
vacuum
Keeps me on my
cleaners
toes.
died
That's
mid-hum
my
and the
girl.
hallway
Best part of my
turned into a
day.
tomb. Because that sound, that innocent, desperate sound, had just announced their presence to a man who made people disappear.
We
The
need to
double
hurry.
doors
I
opened.
know, but the baby.
JiSoo
We'll
Park stepped
protect them.
into the
Stay close.
corridor.
All right, I'm right
He didn't
here.
look angry. He didn't raise his voice. He simply stood there in his perfectly tailored navy suit, his face unreadable, his eyes scanning the frozen staff before landing on Genevieve. On the baby, in her arms. "Who," he said quietly, "is making that noise?" Every survival instinct screamed run, but Jenny's crying stopped. Not gradually, instantly. Her tiny body relaxed, her red, tear-stained face turned toward him. Her small hands reached outward, not away, from him, toward him. Genevieve felt her blood turn to ice, because babies don't reach for monsters. And JiSoo Park extended his hands. "Bring her to me," he said. Before we continue, comment below and tell us where you're watching from. If you're hooked by stories of redemption, chosen families, and the cost of protection, subscribe and turn on notifications. Share this with someone who needs to hear that love can crack even the hardest armor. Now, let's go back to where it all started. Genevieve Carter had exactly 14 minutes before her shift ended. 14 minutes to finish mopping the executive corridor. 14 minutes to pack her supplies, clock out, and disappear before anyone important arrived. 14 minutes to pretend her 8-month-old daughter wasn't hidden in the supply closet down the hall. The babysitter had texted at 5:14 a.m. "Can't make it. Sorry. No explanation. No alternative." Just 4 words that shattered Genevieve's carefully constructed survival. Tout le plan. She had stared at her phone in the darkness of her studio apartment, Jenny crying in her arms, the eviction notice sitting on the counter like a death sentence. Rent was 2 weeks overdue. The shelters were full. Her family was 2 states away and hadn't spoken to her since she'd gotten pregnant. So she'd done the unthinkable. She'd brought her baby to the one place babies should never be. Jenny had been quiet for the first hour, nestled in a nest of clean towels in the supply closet. Genevieve had checked on her every 10 minutes, her heart hammering each time she opened the door. But babies don't stay quiet forever. The cry started small, a whimper, a fussy sound that Genevieve tried to soothe with whispered pleas and a pacifier that Jenny immediately spit out. Then it escalated. Sharp, desperate, loud. The sound cut through the marble hallway like a siren. Genevieve froze, her mop clattering to the floor. Around her, the world stopped. A vacuum cleaner died mid-whir. A cleaning cart stopped rolling. Maria, who'd worked this shift for 6 years, went pale and backed toward the service elevator without a word. "Control your child," the night supervisor hissed from the end of the hall, her eyes darting toward the double doors like a trapped animal. "If he hears—" The doors opened. Every sound died. The air itself seemed to compress, heavy and suffocating, as if the building's breath had been stolen. JiSoo Park stepped into the hallway. He was tall, composed, dressed in a navy suit so perfectly tailored it looked sculpted onto his frame. His hair was styled with precision. His face was calm, unreadable. Not angry, not confused. Just present. That frightened Genevieve more than rage ever could. His eyes swept the corridor once, slow and deliberate, taking in the frozen staff, the abandoned equipment, the terror no one dared speak aloud. Then they landed on Genevieve, on the sound coming from behind her. "Who," he said quietly, "is making that noise?" His voice didn't need to be loud. It filled every corner of the hallway, pressed against every nerve ending, demanded an answer without raising a single decibel. Genevieve's mouth went dry. Jenny's crying echoed again from the supply closet. "It's mine," Genevieve forced out, her voice barely steady. "My daughter. I'm so sorry. I'll leave right now." She took a step backward. "Stay." One word, one command. And impossibly, Jenny's crying stopped. Not in hiccups. Not gradually fading. It stopped as if someone had flipped a switch. Genevieve's heart slammed against her ribs. She turned and opened the supply closet with trembling hands. Jenny was sitting up in her makeshift bed, her tear-streaked face turned toward the hallway, toward him. Her small hands reached outward, fingers opening and closing. "No," Genevieve whispered, instinct overriding fear. She scooped Jenny up, held her close, protective. But Jenny leaned forward, straining against her mother's grip, her wide eyes locked on JiSoo Park. He took 3 measured steps forward. Then he extended his hands. "Bring her to me." It wasn't a request. Every fiber of Genevieve's being screamed run. Grab your baby and run, down the service stairs, out the back entrance, away from this man whose name people in Columbus whispered like a curse. But her feet moved forward. One step, then another, until she was standing directly in front of him, close enough to see the cold precision in his dark eyes, close enough to smell expensive cologne and something sharper underneath. Gunpowder, maybe, or steel. Jenny reached for him. Genevieve's hands shook as she loosened her grip. And then her daughter was in his arms. Jenny settled against his chest immediately, her cheek pressed against the fabric of his suit. Her breathing slowed. Her small fingers clutched his collar as if she'd known him her entire short life. The hallway was a vacuum. JiSoo Park looked down at the child in his arms. For the first time, something shifted in his expression. Not softness, not warmth. Shock. "She's calm," he said, more to himself than anyone else. Genevieve couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. Jenny made a small, contented sound and closed her eyes. "She never does that," Genevieve whispered. "Not with strangers." JiSoo adjusted his hold unconsciously, supporting Jenny's head with the practiced care of someone who'd done this before. His thumb brushed against the baby's curls. "What is her name?" "Jenny." He nodded once, still staring at the sleeping child. Then he turned and walked toward the executive office doors. "Come with me." Not a question, not an invitation, a command. Genevieve's legs felt like water, but she followed. Behind her, she heard the supervisor exhale like someone who'd just witnessed a miracle or a tragedy. The double doors closed behind them with a sound like a cell door locking, and Genevieve realized, with cold, creeping certainty, that she had just walked her baby into the lion's den. The office was bigger than Genevieve's entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows stretched across the western wall, revealing Columbus waking up below them. The Ohio River caught the first light. The State House dome gleamed in the distance. Cars crossed bridges like blood cells through veins. But Genevieve couldn't appreciate the view. All she could see was the vast mahogany desk, the leather chairs positioned like thrones. The space between her and the only exit. 15 feet that might as well have been miles. JiSoo Park moved to his desk with Jenny still cradled against his chest. He didn't sit. He stood there, one hand supporting the baby's head, the other resting on the polished wood surface. Watching her. "Why did you bring an infant here?" His voice was conversational, almost gentle. That terrified her more than shouting would have. "I had no choice," Genevieve said. "Everyone has choices. Not when all of them are bad." His head tilted slightly. "Explain." So she did. The words spilled out before she could stop them. The canceled babysitter. The eviction notice. The father who disappeared the moment he saw 2 lines on a test. The utilities that would be shut off Friday. The food bank that was only open Tuesdays and Thursdays. the crushing, suffocating weight of trying to survive in a city that didn't care if she lived or died. JiSoo listened without interrupting. His expression never changed. His eyes never left her face. When she finished, the silence stretched so long Genevieve wondered if he expected more. Then Jenny shifted in his arms, making a small sound in her sleep. JiSoo looked down at her, and something impossible happened. His features softened. Just for a second. Just enough for Genevieve to see the ghost of whoever he used to be before he became this. His phone buzzed on the desk. He glanced at it, then swiped the call away without answering. It buzzed again. Insistent. He picked it up one-handed, never disturbing Jenny's position. Cancel it, he said quietly into the phone. A pause. I don't care. Reschedule. Another pause, longer this time. His jaw tightened. I said cancel it. He ended the call and set the phone face down. That meeting was worth $7 million, he said, not looking at Genevieve. They flew in from Seoul this morning. Genevieve's throat closed. I'm sorry. Don't apologize for something you didn't do. His eyes lifted to hers. You didn't ask me to hold your daughter. You didn't ask me to cancel my meeting. I made those choices. Why? I haven't decided yet. He moved around the desk, still holding Jenny with the ease of someone who'd done this before. The baby's breathing was deep and even, her small hand clutching his collar. Genevieve Carter, JiSoo said, 23 years old, originally from Dayton, father unknown, mother estranged, no criminal record, no college degree, no savings. $217 in your checking account as of this morning. He paused. Should I continue? The floor dropped out from under her. How do you? I know everything about everyone who enters this building. He said it like stating the weather. You've been here 3 weeks. You arrive early, you leave late. You never speak unless spoken to. You're afraid of being noticed. I was, Genevieve whispered. Until today. Until today, he agreed. Jenny stirred, her eyes fluttering open. For a moment she looked confused. Then she saw JiSoo's face and relaxed immediately, as if confirming he was real. He adjusted his hold and she nestled back against him. You will not clean anymore, JiSoo said, his tone shifting into something harder. Final. Genevieve's stomach dropped, her vision blurred at the edges. 3 weeks of work. Gone. The rent she'd never catch up on. The eviction she couldn't fight. I understand, she whispered, forcing the words past the tightness in her throat. JiSoo's eyes narrowed slightly. You misunderstand. He crossed to where she stood and carefully transferred Jenny back into her arms. The baby protested with a small whimper before settling against her mother's familiar heartbeat. You will work for me instead, JiSoo said. Personal assistant. You'll manage my schedule, handle communications, accompany me to meetings. He gestured toward the corner of the office where a closed door stood. There's a private space with everything your daughter needs. She stays with you. Always. Genevieve stared at him. I don't have any experience. You have what I need. Which is? Desperation. He said it without cruelty, just cold observation. Desperate people are loyal. They don't ask questions. They don't make moral judgments about whose money pays for their child's food. The words should have stung. Instead, they felt like a key turning in a lock. Your salary will be enough to keep you stable, he continued. Your housing situation will be resolved by end of business today. You start Monday. Why? Genevieve breathed. Why would you do this? JiSoo looked at Jenny, who was staring at him with wide, curious eyes. Because she wasn't afraid of me, he said quietly. And I need to understand why. He returned to his desk, dismissing her with a gesture. My driver will take you home. Don't be late Monday. Genevieve stood frozen. Jenny warm in her arms, her mind spinning. She'd just been handed salvation by the most dangerous man in Columbus, and she had no idea what it would cost her. 3 weeks in, Genevieve learned the difference between power and violence. Power was JiSoo Park sitting perfectly still while a real estate developer stammered through excuses, his voice climbing higher with each sentence. Violence was what happened when JiSoo finally spoke. 4 quiet words that made the man go pale and leave everything he owned on the table. "We're done here," JiSoo said. The man was escorted out by security. His empire dissolved by Monday. Genevieve had witnessed 12 such conversations in 3 weeks. She took notes in neat shorthand, scheduled follow-ups, never flinched. She learned to read the room before JiSoo entered it. Who was nervous? Who was lying? Who wouldn't leave the building alive? She learned to be invisible. But JiSoo never looked at her like she was invisible. He looked at Jenny. During conference calls, his eyes tracked the baby playing on the floor of his office. During contract negotiations, he paused mid-sentence when Jenny made sounds. During the long silences when he reviewed financial reports, she caught him watching the baby sleep in her portable crib, his expression unreadable. And Jenny watched him back. She crawled toward him during meetings, ignoring everyone else. She reached for him when she was fussy. She smiled when he entered the room, that wide, toothless smile babies reserve for people they trust completely. It should have been strange. It should have been terrifying. Instead, Genevieve found herself grateful. "She likes you," Genevieve said one afternoon, adjusting Jenny on her hip while JiSoo reviewed documents. He didn't look up. "Children are honest. They don't know how to lie yet." "What does that mean?" "It means she sees something the rest of the world doesn't." He signed his name with precise strokes. "Or she's too young to know better." "Which do you think it is?" JiSoo finally looked up. "I think she's going to be disappointed when she's older." The statement sat between them like broken glass. "You had a daughter," Genevieve said quietly. It wasn't a question. His pen stopped moving. The silence stretched so long she thought he wouldn't answer. "I had a family," he said finally. "A long time ago." He returned to the document. "They're gone now." Genevieve didn't ask how. She'd learned not to ask questions that had answers she couldn't unhear. But she understood something in that moment. JiSoo Park wasn't watching Jenny because she was a curiosity. He was watching her because I reminded him of someone he'd lost. The eviction notice never came. Instead, Genevieve received keys to a 2-bedroom apartment in a building with security cameras and a doorman who nodded respectfully when he saw her. Her utilities were paid 6 months in advance. Her bank account showed deposits that made her hands shake. She was safe. For the first time in Jenny's entire life, they were safe. She stopped flinching when her phone buzzed, stopped checking over her shoulder in parking lots, stopped rationing formula and counting diapers. She started breathing again, but safety, she learned, was its own kind of prison. Because the closer she got to JiSoo Park, the more she saw. The meetings that ended with blood on marble floors. The phone calls in Korean that made his expression turn to stone. The way his security detail doubled after certain conversations. And the way people looked at her now, not with contempt, but with pity. As if they knew something she didn't. She discovered what they knew on a Thursday afternoon. JiSoo was in a meeting with 2 men Genevieve had never seen before. She'd been instructed to wait in the adjacent room with Jenny, door slightly ajar, ready to bring documents if called. Jenny was napping. Genevieve was reviewing the week's schedule. Then she heard a name that made her blood freeze. "Park is getting soft," one of the men said. His accent was thick, unfamiliar. "He keeps a woman and a baby in his office now. Makes him vulnerable." "Leverage," the second man agreed. "When we move, we take them first." Silence. Then JiSoo's voice, cold as a blade. "You're suggesting what exactly?" "I'm suggesting," the first man said carefully, that anyone close to you is expendable, and your enemies know it. Then my enemies will learn what happens when they touch what's mine. With respect, they're not yours. They're collateral. The woman is nobody. The baby is... The sound that followed was sharp and final. Furniture scraping. Something hitting the floor, a choked gasp. Careful, JiSoo said softly. You were about to finish that sentence. Genevieve's hands trembled as she closed her laptop. Jenny stirred but didn't wake. The meeting ended 5 minutes later. The two men left without looking at her. JiSoo appeared in the doorway, his expression unchanged, his suit still perfectly pressed. No evidence of whatever had just happened. Genevieve, he said. A moment. She followed him back into the office, leaving Jenny visible through the open door. You heard, he said. Not a question. She nodded. Then you understand the situation. I understand, Genevieve whispered, that my baby is now a target because of me. No. JiSoo's eyes were hard. She's a target because of me. There's a difference. Is there? He looked past her, toward the doorway where Jenny slept peacefully, unaware that her existence had just become a weapon. I won't let anything happen to her, JiSoo said. You can't promise that. No, he agreed. But I can promise what happens to anyone who tries. The words should have been comforting. Instead, they felt like a countdown. Genevieve understood, with cold, crystalline clarity, that she and Jenny weren't just close to JiSoo Park anymore. They were leverage. And leverage was always expendable. The glass exploded inward at 3:47 p.m. Genevieve was reaching for a file when the window shattered. The sound came first, sharp, wrong, impossibly loud. Then the screaming. Then the gunfire. She had 1 second to process what was happening. 1 second to see the figures pouring through the broken window. 1 second to understand they were going to die. Then JiSoo's body slammed into hers. They hit the floor hard, his weight crushing the air from her lungs. His arm wrapped around her head, pressing her face against his chest. She couldn't see, couldn't breathe, could only hear the percussion of bullets tearing through furniture, walls, everything. Don't move, JiSoo said against her ear. Not loud, barely a whisper, but absolute. The shooting continued. 5 seconds. 10. An eternity compressed into moments. Then silence. Not peace. The worst kind of silence. The kind that meant something was about to happen. JiSoo lifted his head slightly. Genevieve felt his body tense, coiled like a weapon. Then she heard it. A baby's cry. Jenny. Still in the adjacent room. Still in her crib. Screaming. No. Genevieve started to move. JiSoo's hand clamped over her mouth. Listen to me very carefully, he said, his voice absolutely calm. When I say run, you go to that room. You take Jenny. You go down the service stairs. Do not stop. Do not look back. Understood? She nodded against his palm. Footsteps. Getting closer. JiSoo's other hand moved to his waistband, retrieving something she'd never seen him carry before. A gun. Matte black. Efficient. Run, he said. And then he was moving. Genevieve scrambled to her feet, her legs shaking, her vision tunneling. She heard the first shot behind her. Close. Deafening. Then another. She didn't look back. Jenny's crying grew louder. Genevieve burst through the door, scooped her daughter from the crib, pressed the baby's head against her shoulder. Jenny's body was rigid with fear, her screams vibrating through Genevieve's chest. I've got you, Genevieve gasped. Mama's got you. Behind her, more gunshots, shouting in Korean. Something heavy hitting the floor. She ran for the service exit JiSoo had shown her first week. The one she'd never needed to use until now. The stairwell was concrete and fluorescent lights. Her footsteps echoed. Jenny's crying echoed louder. Down 1 flight. 2. 3. The gunfire above them stopped. Genevieve kept running. 4 flights. 5. Her lungs burned. Her arms shook. Jenny's weight felt impossible. 6 flights. Then she heard the door above her slam open. She froze, pressing against the wall, trying to quiet her breathing, trying to quiet Jenny's sobs. Footsteps on the stairs. Fast, purposeful, getting closer. Genevieve looked down at the remaining flights. Too many, too far. The footsteps were 1 floor above now. She pressed her back against the wall, turned her body to shield Jenny, and waited. The door to her level opened. JiSoo Park stepped through. He was bleeding, his suit jacket torn at the shoulder, dark stains spreading across his white shirt. His face was spattered with blood. Not all of it his. His breathing was controlled but heavy. But he was alive. His eyes found them immediately. "You stopped," he said. "I heard. I thought. You should have kept running." He crossed to them in 3 strides, checking them both with quick, efficient movements. "Are you hurt?" Genevieve shook her head, unable to speak. JiSoo's hand moved to Jenny's back, his palm spanning the baby's small frame. "Is she—" Jenny's crying had stopped. She lifted her head from Genevieve's shoulder, her face red and tear-stained, her breath hitching with aftershocks of fear. She looked at JiSoo, at the blood on his face, the torn clothing, the gun still in his other hand, and she reached for him. Her small hands opened and closed, reaching, wanting. Genevieve felt tears blur her vision. She never, not with anyone else. JiSoo holstered the gun and took Jenny from Genevieve's arms. The baby pressed her face against his neck, her crying dissolving into small, hiccuping sounds. "Dada," Jenny said. The word was clear, unmistakable. Her first word. Genevieve's breath caught. JiSoo went absolutely still. His eyes widened, not with shock, not with surprise, with something deeper. Something that looked like grief. "She doesn't," Genevieve started. "She doesn't know." "I know," JiSoo said quietly. Jenny pulled back to look at his face, her small hand patting his cheek, leaving tiny fingerprints in the blood. "Dada," she said again, smiling. And JiSoo Park, the man who'd built an empire on control, who'd walked through gunfire without flinching, who'd ended lives with 4 quiet words, broke. Not violently, not dramatically. He simply closed his eyes and pressed his forehead against Jenny's, his shoulders dropping, his breath shaking. "I'm not," he whispered. "I'm not your father." But Jenny just smiled and tucked her head back under his chin. And Genevieve understood, watching them in that concrete stairwell with gunpowder still in the air, that it didn't matter what JiSoo said. Jenny had already decided who he was. The question was whether he'd survive long enough to deserve it. They took JiSoo's private elevator to the penthouse. Genevieve had never been to his home. She'd imagined something cold, glass and steel and emptiness. What she found instead was a space that looked lived in. Books on shelves, a kitchen that showed signs of actual use, photographs on a mantel that she deliberately didn't look at too closely. JiSoo disappeared into a bedroom to change while his doctor, a woman who arrived within minutes and asked no questions, cleaned and bandaged his wounds in the living room. Genevieve sat on a couch that cost more than her yearly salary, holding Jenny, who refused to let go of her mother's shirt. "Dada?" Jenny asked, looking around. "He's coming back," Genevieve whispered. When JiSoo emerged 20 minutes later, he wore simple clothes, dark pants, a plain shirt. Without the suit, without the armor of his usual presentation, he looked different. Younger, more human, more dangerous somehow, for being real. The doctor left, the door locked behind her with a quiet click. JiSoo poured himself 2 fingers of whiskey, downed it in 1 swallow, then poured another he didn't touch. "They're all dead," he said without preamble. The ones who came for us. The ones who sent them. He turned to face her. You're safe now. Am I? For the moment. Genevieve tightened her arms around Jenny. How long is a moment? Long enough. He picked up the second glass but didn't drink. Until the next person decides I'm vulnerable. Until word spreads that I kept a woman and child alive when I should have. He stopped, set the glass down. Until they decide to try again. Then we should leave. Yes, JiSoo said. You should. But he didn't move, didn't look away. Jenny squirmed in Genevieve's arms, reaching toward him. Dada. She doesn't understand, Genevieve said quietly. What that word means. What you are. I know what I am. JiSoo's voice was flat. I've been what I am for 15 years. Since I was 23 years old and made a choice I can never undo. He finally looked at her directly. I had a daughter once. Her name was Hannah. She was 3 years old when men broke into our home in Seoul because of debts my father owed. Debts I inherited. The silence stretched like broken skin. My wife tried to protect her, he continued. She died protecting her. And I was too late. I arrived to find... His jaw tightened. I arrived too late. Genevieve couldn't breathe. So I became what they were, JiSoo said simply. I learned their language. I became better at violence than they could imagine. I built something that could never be taken from me again. He looked at Jenny. And then your daughter looked at me like I was worth something, like I was someone who could be trusted, someone who could be called. His voice broke. Jenny reached for him again, insistent now. Dada, up. JiSoo crossed the room and knelt in front of them, eye level with the baby. Jenny immediately grabbed his face with both hands, smiling. I don't want to be what I've become, he said, not to Jenny, but to Genevieve. I don't want to be the reason people die. I don't want to be the monster everyone fears. He paused. But I can't stop being him. Not completely. Not while enemies exist. Not while we're here, Genevieve finished. Yes. So you're asking us to leave? No. JiSoo's eyes met hers. I'm asking you to stay. Genevieve felt the world tilt. Not as my assistant, he continued. Not as staff. As... He struggled with the word. As family. As people I protect, not because it's strategic, but because He looked at Jenny, then back at Genevieve. Because I choose to. That's not a choice, Genevieve whispered. That's a cage. Yes, he agreed. But it's a cage I'll burn the world to protect. Jenny leaned forward and kissed JiSoo's cheek, leaving a wet baby kiss on his skin. Dada safe, she said, patting his face. JiSoo closed his eyes. Genevieve looked at her daughter. This 8-month-old baby who'd somehow seen through everything. Who'd looked at a monster and decided he was worth loving. Who'd spoken her first word not to her mother, but to a man who'd killed to keep them alive. She thought about the eviction notices, the empty apartment, the nights of wondering if they'd survive the week. She thought about the blood on marble floors. She thought about JiSoo's composure breaking in a stairwell. And she thought about the way Jenny looked at him, not with fear, but with absolute certainty that he would keep her safe. Genevieve took a breath that felt like stepping off a cliff. Okay, she said. JiSoo's eyes opened. Okay? We'll stay. She shifted Jenny so she was between them. But if this ever puts her in danger again, then you leave, JiSoo said immediately. No questions asked. No one stops you. You promise. I promise. Jenny grabbed both their hands, pulling them together, laughing as if she'd accomplished something remarkable. And maybe she had. Genevieve looked around the penthouse, at the city lights beyond the windows, at the locked doors, at the man who'd become a monster to protect what he loved and lost. She realized with something between terror and relief, that the most dangerous place in Columbus had just become the safest. Not because nothing could hurt them here, but because someone finally would die trying to prevent it. Jenny settled between them, already, falling asleep, one hand holding Jisoo's finger, the other clutching Genevieve's shirt. "Dada," she murmured drowsily. "Mama." And for the first time in 8 months, Genevieve believed her daughter might be right about something. Even if that something was trusting a monster to become a man,